Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today I want to go into the book of Malachi, the second chapter, continuing from the first chapter. As we went through, the Lord put the Spirit upon Malachi to, speak onto Israel, and in particular against the priests, right, the Levites, for the transgressions, right, that they were committing against the Lord, and the abuse of their position, right, in not executing the ordinances of the priesthood the proper way, right, offering, unworthy sacrifices and taking the service of the Lord for granted. So continuing in Malachi, the second chapter, right, the Lord is still addressing here, right, as you see, the priests to be disciplined. And let me actually hold this precept on deck here while it's still in mind. Let's see here. There we go. All right. So this is the book of Malachi, chapter 2, verse 1. And now, O ye priests, this commandment is for you. If ye will not hear, and if ye will not lay it to heart, meaning to think upon it, to consider it, to give glory unto my name, saith the Lord of hosts. And how would they give glory to the name of the Lord? By executing their jobs correctly, right, and fearing the Lord. I will even send a curse upon you, and I will curse your blessings. Yea, I have cursed them already, because ye do not lay it to heart. So because of their neglect to keep the proper ways of the Lord, especially being in the role and the position that they were put in, right, the Lord said here that he would curse them. Okay, in fact, as he says, he has already done. And those curses that curse would manifest in the calamities that he would bring upon them, and not just isolated to the Levites, but really upon, as we would see in the near future, the kingdom of Judah here. Verse 3, behold, I will corrupt your seed and spread dung upon your faces. Okay, and so going into the seed, right, going into their offspring. And when you go into the definition of seed, right, you have seed as in actual seed, like crops, and then you also have seed as in sperm or offspring. Okay, and here the Lord is as a part of the speaking against the priests, right? He's letting them know here via Malachi the judgment he would bring, the corruption he would bring, to where they would go from the state of being, holy, right, and executing these holy ordinances, to now being in a position of not so holy, right, of defilement, okay, and not being regarded or acknowledged as they once were, because when they were in those positions, they didn't take it seriously. And spread dung upon your faces, even the dung of your solemn feasts. Now, the dung being spread upon your face isn't literal, right? The Lord isn't gonna come down on the earth, grab a hot piece of cow shit and just smear it upon the faces of every priest over there. But this is an idiom, right, or another way of saying that he is going to humiliate them, right, like publicly, openly. Even the dung of your solemn feasts, and one shall take you away with it. And what is referenced here is the dung of the solemn feast, right? So as I pulled up Leviticus 4 here, which is an example, remember that when the sacrifices were made, right, or even just whether it was for a feast or sin offering or whatever the case was, when they brought the animal, the bullock or the ram or the lamb, they would prepare it, right? So they would cut it asunder. They would remove the parts of it that weren't that weren't clean, right, or to be offered to the Lord, and a part of that was the dung. So let's read about that here in Leviticus 4. But what the Lord is saying here is he's gonna embarrass them. He's gonna bring them low, almost to the level of the dung that's taken away from the animal and taken outside, okay, to a different part where it would be burnt over there, because it wasn't clean. And that's what the Lord is saying he's going to liken the priest onto. So this is Leviticus chapter 4, verse 10. And it reads, as it was taken off from the bullock. This is just a continuation. You can read above for more context. But this is going into the, matter of fact, I'll start at 11. But this is going into the things that you will remove, the parts of the bullock in this case that you will remove. So it says, and the skin of the bullock and all his flesh, with his head and with his legs, and his inwards and his dung. Even the whole bullock shall he carry forth without the camp, meaning outside of the camp. And it mentions here the camp because we're in the book of Leviticus, right? So at this point, Israel is still in the wilderness. We're dwelling in camps, tents, and the camp being the congregation. But here more specifically, right, the core of that congregation, when you read in, let's just say the Torah, for example, right? The first 5 books, when we were in the wilderness and the Lord instructed us to build the temple, you know, there was a tabernacle, there was the courts and everything, and you would have Israel, the tribes were grouped up, okay, in different sections surrounding, right, the tabernacle, which was in the center. So you'd have the tabernacle in the center, and then the Levites would be closest around, and on the outer ring, you could sort of think about it, which I believe they were grouped up in tribes of, what was it, 4 groups of 3, you know, on the east, north, south, west of the tabernacle, right? So without the camp would be outside of that, as it says here, onto a clean place where the ashes are poured out, and burn him, this bullock, on the wood with fire, where the ashes are poured out, shall he be burnt. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this was for a sin offering, which is why they did this. Yeah, the law on sin offerings. So anyway, just as you would carry out the dung, all right, that's how the Lord is likening the condition that he will bring the priest to for their lack of adherence to his warnings about them executing their roles the correct way. Verse 4, and ye shall know that I have sent this commandment unto you, that my covenant might be with Levi. So by this, you're going to know that this warning, this order, this commandment was by me, was sent from me. Okay, that my covenant might be with Levi, which are the priests, right? The Levites, saith the Lord of hosts. So the Lord sent this, as it says, this commandment that they would, how did he word it up here? Lay it to heart, right? That they would lay it to heart. That way that covenant would be preserved and that they wouldn't break that covenant. Verse 5, my covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me, and was afraid before my name. And this, when the Lord says him here, he's really referring to the tribe of the Levites. And there is an account, right? I believe it might be in Exodus. I don't remember the exact book, but it's in the Torah where Moses had the Levites, right? When he came down, and I forget the exact instance of it, right? So many different stories in the scriptures, but there was a point in time where the Levites, Moses gathered the Levites, and they went in the camp of Israel and slew certain Israelites that were going off, right? That there was some form of wickedness they were doing, right? And the Levites, which remained faithful to the Lord, right, went in and slew them. Okay, so the Lord here, when he says Levi, is really referring to the Levites. Verse 5, my covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me, and was afraid before my name. The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. So point being here that the Levites obeyed the Lord, okay, with the proper fear and discipline and the right mindset. Hence the Lord made this covenant with them, right? The Levitical priesthood. Verse 7, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, right? So as a priest, you are expected, right, to keep that knowledge, to speak the right things concerning the Lord, concerning the proper ways that the people should conduct themselves. And that's why the priests were always in that position of like elders or authority, or they would look to as the judges, right? You would have the Sanhedrin, which would have a good portion of the priests up in there, the scribes, the priests, and so on. It says here, and they should seek the law at his mouth. So the people would come to inquire of the law at the mouth of the priest, because basically they were like the go-to ones when it came to that. For he is the messenger of the Lord Yahweh of hosts. But ye are departed out of the way. Ye have caused many to stumble at the law. So where the covenant was, or the original case of the Levites was that they would turn many away from iniquity, right, by showing them the right way. The Levites at this point in time, as the Lord said, had departed out of the way. They had forsaken the ways of the Lord, the things that were expected of them. And instead it says, ye have caused many to stumble at the law. Ye have corrupted. So when they stumble at the law, meaning that instead of making it clear to them the proper and correct way, you misled them, right? You made the law likened unto a stumbling block, and falling here would be like to commit sin or to commit iniquity. So by making the law likened unto a stumbling block, whether the people knew or not, they would trip at it, meaning they would end up doing something that isn't really what the Lord desires or requires, but they wouldn't know any better because they would be following what the priests were saying. Like, for example, Eli's two sons, how they made Israel to abhor the sacrifices of the Lord because they wouldn't let the Israelites, do it the right way, right? When they came to boil the meat, they said, no, I want the meat dry. I want to roast it. Don't boil it and then let me take my pick from it. No. See, it says, ye have corrupted the covenant of Levi, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts. Therefore have I also made you contemptible and base before all the people. See, so just as you corrupted the covenant with Levi, you started going off. Now I've also made you, as it says, contemptible and base, brought you down, made you, not as prominent as before all the people, according as ye have not kept my ways, but have been partial in the law. See, and when you're partial in the law, meaning you're not judging righteous judgment, right? You're biased or you're swayed one way as opposed to being objective, right? And standing by what the law says. Verse 10, have we not all, and so like showing favoritism, that's like an example of being partial. Have we not all one Father? Hath not one God created us? Why do we deal treacherously every man against his brother? By profaning the covenant of our fathers. And according to that covenant, the scriptures talk about how Israel was to conduct themselves one with another. And yet that's not what they were doing here. And those that were in positions of authority were misusing that to take advantage of the rest. As case in point, we read in the book of Nehemiah what they were doing. So one recurring theme that you're starting to see here throughout a good portion of the writings or the books of the prophets are this outcry or this rebuke or protest against the treacherous behavior of Israelites, whether it was idol worship or treating each other unjustly, right? Committing treachery against each other. It was the same thing over and over and over again. Verse 11, Judah hath dealt treacherously, and an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Judah hath profaned the holiness of the Lord Yahweh, which he loved, and hath married the daughter of a strange god. Now Judah meaning the men of Judah here, which would be Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. As it says here, they have profaned the holiness of the Lord, right? Instead of keeping themselves separate and keeping as the scriptures say, thou shalt have no other gods before me, they instead married the daughters of a strange god. So they were marrying the heathen women, which were worshiping these false gods. And what did that end up leading to? It ended up leading to Israelites being swayed to serve the gods of these heathens, or these heathen women. Verse 12, the Lord will cut off the man that doeth this. So anybody that partakes in that, the Lord says he's going to take them out. He's going to cut them off. He's going to destroy them. The master and the scholar. Now, when you look at these two words, when you go into the word for master, right, it goes into, I believe it's one that is, let me look it up again. Escape my mind. Right, to rouse up, to awake, right? So basically you're awake, you're as it says, to to stir up, to incite. And when you go into the word scholar, it is aina, right? It says here to answer, to respond, right? To answer to. So in other words, one that is awake and aware and alert. Anybody that does this, the Lord is going to cut them off, right? Anybody who is fully aware and awake, they know what they're doing, out of the tabernacles of Jacob, and him that offereth an offering unto the Lord of hosts. So they're fully aware of what it is that they're doing in marrying the women of these other nations who are serving these other gods, and yet they still do it. And then they turn around and offer an offering unto the Lord of hosts. He's going to destroy them. Verse 13, and this have ye done again. In other words, something else that you do is covering the altar of the Lord Yahweh with tears, with weeping, and with crying out, insomuch that he regardeth not the offering any more, or receiveth it with goodwill at your hand. So, secondly, you go and cry and cry and cry, because the Lord doesn't regard your offerings anymore. He doesn't receive it like he used to anymore. Yet ye say, wherefore? Like you're saying, why? Why is the Lord not accepting our offerings as he did before? Because the Lord Yahweh hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously, yet she is thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. Now, from verse 14 down to 17, right, it starts to deal with this concept of treacherousness, right, or unrighteous dealings between the man and his wife, for example. And on the contextual level, right, on the physical level, you had at this point in time, keep in mind that you had a lot of these Israelite men, right, women as well, but particularly men, that would be leaving their wives to marry these heathen women. Okay, and that was introducing that mingling of the other nations within here. Okay, so on a physical level, this was an example of the treachery between the husband and the wife, as it says, of thy youth. But on the spiritual level, this is dealing with the youth being the truth, right, or as we would call it today, the truth. But back then, really like the covenant, or the ways or wisdom, or the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which are sometimes likened onto a feminine spirit, like wisdom, for example, right? And then the precept for this, real quick, before we continue on here, is Revelation chapter 2, verse 4, right? As Yahweh Shai mentioned here, in rebuke of the various churches here. I believe this one was, right, the church of Ephesus. Now, in particular here, he mentioned, right, nevertheless, he goes into the things that they're doing right, but in the things that he has a problem with them about. So in verse 4, he says, nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. So who or what was the first love that they left? It was that original way of, or that original, I just go with way, for lack of a better word, of serving Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. So deviating from that, right, was an example of leaving that first love. Similar to when we first hear about this truth, right, and in its purity, right, we have that passion and that desire, but you have some individuals that as time goes on, they start to deviate and veer off from that standard, right, which is here likened onto that first love, right, which is this truth ultimately. So going back to Malachi, you have that spiritual aspect here, which is the wife of the youth that they dealt treacherously against, right? The wife of that covenant being the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, but on a physical contextual level being their actual women, okay, which was unlawful as well. And reading verse 14 again, it says, "Yet ye say, wherefore? Because the Lord Yahweh hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously." And remember, as we read up above, it mentioned how, right, how the Judah had married the daughters of a strange god. So it says here, "Yet she is thy companion," right, being the wife, "and the wife of thy covenant." So in the literal sense, when you marry, right, a woman, you know, in the standard way of ancient Israel, she would be a virgin, right? And then you would enter into a covenant when you actually marry this woman. And you weren't a save, right? And really this was when you go into when Yahweh Shai mentioned it when he came on the scene. He said because of their hard-headedness, right? Moses basically said you could give the woman a bill of divorce, but really that's not the way it was meant to be. What was meant to be was once the woman married the man, she was to be with him forever. They were to stay together forever until obviously death, right? That's where the saying "till death do us part" comes about, right? But they'll go and say "till death do us part," and then 2 months later it's not death that's doing them apart. Right? Anyway, so you enter into a covenant with the woman when you marry her. Verse 15, "And did not he make one?" Right, now the wording here is a bit, tricky, but really what it's saying here is he did not the Most High make you one, right? And when you read in the scriptures, it tells you that the man is going to marry the woman and they shall become one flesh, right? Yet had he the residue of the spirit. So he still, left a portion of the spirit, though he made you one. And wherefore one? Why one? That he might seek a godly seed, right? And what is that seed? The seed being the offspring that comes from that union. So the Lord made you one, left a portion of the right spirit with you, that you may then produce a godly seed. Therefore, and naturally, real quick, precept that comes to mind is 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And I think it's, yeah. So here, as the Apostle Paul mentions, that if you have an unbelieving wife, right, but if she's pleased to dwell with you, don't just leave her, and vice versa, unbelieving husband, but he's pleased to dwell with you, don't leave him. But there's something he mentioned here. Here we go. 1 Corinthians 7:14. It says here, "For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy." You see? Because of that, because what could end up happening is, as the Apostle Paul mentions, the reason he said don't leave them is because you never know if your holiness or your righteousness in following the ways of the Lord could then influence the other person to where, they could then repent, or the Lord might have mercy on them through you. Okay. And here he goes into how the children, your children now become holy, right, through you, basically. So going back to Malachi, this just a precept that came to mind. But continuing back in Malachi, so the Lord did this union that he might seek, right, or that he might gain a godly seed. "Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth, because the Lord joined man and woman together, not so that they can go their separate ways or corrupt each other, but that they may, be in a holy and perfect union and produce a godly offspring, which would then continue that cycle, generating a nation of, the godly Israelites." Verse 16, "For the Lord Yahweh, the God of Israel, saith that he hateth putting away meaning divorce. So the Most High hates divorces. Okay, what he has joined, he doesn't like it to be separated. For one, so if you're ever looking for the precept, well, Malachi 2:16, the Lord says he hates divorces. That's the putting away. For one covereth violence with his garment, right? And what that means is they would deal treacherously, but they would cover it up as though, everything is all good. Saith the Lord of hosts, because when you go into the word covereth, it means to conceal. Therefore take heed to your spirit, that ye deal not treacherously. Ye have wearied the Lord Yahweh with your words. Yet ye say, wherein have we wearied him? When ye say, every one that doeth evil is good in the sight of the Lord, and he delighteth in them, or where is the God of judgment? So here the Lord is saying, because people come to you, right, as we read up above, to seek the words of wisdom, the ways to go, because you are like the speaker for the Lord, you are wearying the Lord with your words, because when people who are going off come to you, you're being partial in judgment, and you're saying that no, they're good, right? That it's okay. The Lord loves them. He's okay with it, and he delights in them. But that's not the actual case here. Okay, so you're vexing the Lord, you're wearying the Lord in this, and yet you turn around and say, "Oh, how are we doing that?" Then you go and cry upon the altar, "Oh, the Lord is not accepting our sacrifices. Oh, we're having bad crops. Oh, the Lord is this, is that." And that's why the Lord said, "Are not your ways unequal?" But anyway, that brings us to the end of the book of Malachi, the 2nd chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.